Joining us in studio, Jackie Shandu, political analyst, Peter Major, a mining analyst, is on the line, and Ben Sitlauno is the president of the SA National Mining Council, and we have Lutando Brukwe, a NUM head of transformation, and Adiel Nchabeleng, Transform RSA president. Good evening to you, gentlemen, and thanks so much for joining us. Can we just put it down to a pushback from the mining sector with regards to the transformation charter? Adiel.
I would be very interested to hear NUM's point of view given the situation. But maybe just to open it up, I think it's quite disingenuous that one of the civil society structures, as well as a body, a chamber is not a lawmaking institution in South Africa. Like any other organization, association, or a grouping of businesses have rights. But in this case, we have a situation where a Chamber of Mine has taken the Minister of Minerals and South Africa, particularly South Africans, because the law that was enacted with regards to the the law that the department made, all right, on the empowerment as well as the mining charter, was a law intended to benefit South Africans. So at the same time, you find a situation where now the Chamber of Mines is now harassing ordinary South Africans from benefiting. Forget the minister for a moment here. We're talking about a charter that is intended to benefit ordinary South Africans, that is intended to benefit our cause, which we call radical economic transformation. So when you start tampering with those issues, you're not only dealing with the minister on his own, you're dealing with the black South African economy that we're fighting very hard to emerge. So I'm quite happy that at least now we are starting to see the true colors of white monopoly capital and their intent in terms of frustrating our socio-economic transformation, and particularly the radical economic transformation element of it, which says...
Let's question, sorry, in the... as policymaker and regulators, that they would not have anticipated that the economic transformation process would have been so sluggish or virtually non-existent. And they're now unable, from a ministerial point of view, not to be able to implement a particular, in this case, party position of radical economic transformation and have organizations take you to court, means that the policy themselves or the acts are problematic, Jackie.
No, of course. This democracy, in terms of the constitution and the laws that govern it, unfortunately, is structured in a way that continues to protect and serve the interests of the beneficiaries of both colonialism and apartheid. And I want to go as far as saying, let us trace the origins, the historical origins, even of the Chamber of Mines across the African continent. If you go, one interesting writer and historian and activist called George Padmore writes a book in 1936 called How Britain Rules Africa. And he looks at South Africa, he looks at Nigeria, he looks at Zimbabwe, he looks at Uganda and all other colonies of the British then. And that is where you trace the origins of these chambers, Chamber of Mines, Chamber of Businesses. And historically, their intent, their mandate, their work was to ensure that all the raw minerals, be it cocoa, be it diamonds, be it gold, were first mined by Europeans, settler Europeans, and were extracted and sent to Europe by Europeans at agreed prices. So I'm saying you must question the mandate of a Chamber of Mines almost 100 years later in a democratic South Africa that has as one of its key mandates this transformation agenda. But this is an institution that was created to ensure that there are no Africans who extract and export raw minerals and make money. That those who extract are Europeans and those who buy are Europeans at mutually agreed prices. That is the historical mandate of these chambers. So, again, you are correct, Cindy, to say, in terms of legal instruments, in terms of the structure of the economy, unfortunately, we see Minister Zwane, even from the perspective of the ANC, there's no organizational support to say, indeed, of course, we as the ANC are committed, these are transformation, this is part of the transformation agenda, and the mining sector in particular, the development of capitalism in South Africa can be traced to one industry. It is the mining industry, with the discovery first of diamonds and later of gold.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can seek
yes,
to transform the economy of South Africa without making sure that you have your transformation goals and objective met primarily in the mining sector.
Yeah, but that's an indictment on the party, as you're saying. It seems more like an isolated battle that Minister Zwane is facing, let alone all of the other allegations, with the leaks and whatnot. But it doesn't have to take away from the imperative of economic transformation. How then do you, in all of these murky waters that we find ourselves in, what does he have in his arsenal to fight back if the acts or the policies are not supportive of his actions?
Look, at this stage, he has very little, because if you're in a battle and you're the only one fighting, and your entire comrades and entire organization, particularly the ANC, is not behind supporting, we understand that there are people within the ANC that feels very strong that the current charter, which is the mining charter, is against the favors and interests of some of the people that they serve in the mining sector. But in this case, this charter is not about individuals. It's not about Minister Zwane. It's about the people of South Africa and their, in terms of empowerment. It's about radical economic transformation. It's about now trying and turning around the injustices of the past in order to make sure that they can be changed in South Africa. The charter speaks, by the way, about industrialization. It speaks about beneficiation of minerals. Correct. It speaks about procurement. It speaks about new products development, as well as new components and equipment and capital to be pumped into mining industry to be actually localized. So certain things, I think we answer them emotionally. The ANC has made various flaws on not understanding one, in this case, from a transformer SA point of view. We've raised these issues with some of the structures. We feel the ANC is making a fundamental mistake, because by not supporting Minister Zwane on a policy that is supposed to empower us and remove us from that draconian colonization economy that we come out of, and then now give us the ability to build a new African economy that we very strong know if we can use the mineral resources as our primary economy, we can reach an objective of being an industrialized nation using our minerals as a base.
Correct.
But that is not happening, because the ruling party right now is not giving the support behind Minister Zwane and is looking at the charter from an artificial point of view. This charter talks about 9 elements: housing, creation of entrepreneurship and development, creation of skills and everything. Yet people are only focusing on 2 issues. One, unencumbered issue, which means people who have income capital, when it says that once empowered is always empowered, which means companies that already made deals, black empowerment deals, and have already collapsed those deals, do not have any more other obligation. Sure. The other aspect of it is because of the extra 4%, which is required to meet the minimum 30% target. We are 23 years into our democracy. We cannot be negotiating yet again to still be relevant in our economy after 23 years of only 30%. We agreed on the charter that 30% is reasonable, but not enough.
Correct.
To address the black challenges that we find ourselves.
Okay, we do have other guests. Ben Sitloano. Maybe you can help me pronounce your name, Ben. It's Ben Sitloano, President of the SA National Mining Council. Good evening to you. Can we, without evidence, of course, and no admission from the chamber necessarily, but can we bring this down to the job losses are being an instrument to pressure the minister to halt the implementation of the mining charter, in your view?
Firstly, let me pronounce my surname correctly. It's Setlauno, not Setlano.
Oh, Setlauno, got you.
Okay. And with regard to the charter, let me go specifically to the charter. With regard to the charter, even though there are so many implications about the consultation, how it brought into this stage, we as the Mining Council, we are fully behind Minister Zwane and the charter. we fully support the charter because this charter is going to address the needs of the vulnerable people, the people who have suffered, because the issue here is all about a bread and butter issue of South Africa. If this charter is going to address the issue of the poor, the poorest of the poor, this is our aim. And whoever is challenging these charters, such as the South African Chamber of Mines, there are so many issues that we need to ask them. Because as we are sitting, there are a number of issues that we also want to make a submission to Minister Zwane. But hence I'm saying this Chamber of Mines are the people who could have made such submission. Because first and foremost, we are facing this unemployment rate in South Africa, which is huge. And then a lot of mine are busy retrenching a number of people. It is for the first time in the history of this country seeing such a number of people getting retrenched by the mines, simply because this charter. And this charter is the same charter that is going to assist the people. One, what they could have been raised by the Chamber of Mines is the employment fund of South Africa started 1926. It was in effect from the 1952. And where's the money of the unemployment fund? Where's the money of the Teba fund? Where's the money of the rehabilitation fund? Where?
All right, Resi Tlauno, we're going to have to repatriate. Yes. We're just getting a slight longer delay than normal. Just, Jackie, it sounds like there needs to be a more wider scope in investigating what it is that the Chamber of Mines necessarily are defending, or who their interests are. I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but the point is, in where all of this is going, in the process, we are shedding jobs. These are real numbers. These are families that already were on the breadline based on the inadequate salaries that they were earning. Now they're completely going to even lose their jobs. How do you mitigate that from a ministerial position when you still want to satisfy the transformation agenda?
It's going to be difficult if you are flying solo as a department of, DMR and you are one ministry, unless you have a political commitment on the part of the ruling party to march forward uncompromisingly with the transformation agenda. Can you imagine? We just said now, what is it? It's probably in the region of 70,000 jobs or so. We hear one mine after another announcing short of 10,000 jobs. 1 million. Would you not concede as a minister, if you have to take in consideration the impact that this would have on the families? We're talking about children, and they're already vulnerable, a sector of society. That must be considered, but it must be weighed against the gains, the potential gains of an industrialized. What the Chamber of Mines is doing is to say this economy must remain a colonial, primitive, underdeveloped economy, an extractive economy, where all it does is just provide raw materials for the industrialized West, of late even China. So we extract raw coal, diamonds, platinum, you name it, we ship it. We can't create sustainable jobs, decent jobs on those bases. What Adil is talking about here is critical to say. It's long overdue, that shift away in terms of the structure, the makeup of this economy. There has to be at some point. Zimbabwe spoke about indigenization, and they took the land. There were consequences. But we've been following studies that says, actually, for instance, in the production of tobacco in Zimbabwe, they are producing much more than the handful of white settler farmers were doing more than a decade ago, after taking back the land and those tobacco farms and giving them back to a handful, to a number of local people, you've increased production, you've increased employment. So we must be very long-term in terms of our view. Are we willing to make the sacrifice of these mines, throwing tantrums like they're doing, threatening to retrench, when we know that even if they do, we take over and we are able to then say we are going to expand, we are going to make sure that we industrialize and we create jobs. Today, we are sponsoring jobs in Europe and America through our minerals. These minerals that are supposed to be going to factories here, they go to factories in London and Paris and Washington, and we can't go on like that.
Yeah, but we can't necessarily attribute the job losses as a direct result of the mining charter, but it is very suspicious in the numbers, number one, and the timing thereof, as to why the economy or the sector is shedding so many jobs.
The job losses were already scheduled before the mining chamber, before the charter was actually promulgated the third time. Okay, remember this was a charter which has come in the first time in 2004, and then after that was now pushed back in 2010, and then now it was reviewed again now in 2015, right? Now, throughout those processes and phases, last year when it was reviewed and everything, there's been processes by which mining companies have been refusing, by the way, to actually comply with the requirements of their licenses and everything. We have to take decisions as people who are leading our society. And today we're not leading them into an economic prosperity direction. We're leading them into a further economic slavery.
Yeah.
By not making decisions that are going to be in their best favor over a long-term period. Yes, the decisions might be painful today. Yes, the decisions to say that we want a charter that speaks to the indigenization of our minerals economy might be a painful thing to actually consider. Because the leaders who are right now are not considering the long-term view, are not taking into consideration the interest of South Africans and their interest over a long-term period. Remember again, the mining Chamber of Mines is an organization that existed for over 130 years. 130 years they've been doing this kind of pushbacks every time. Whenever they feel their interests are threatened, they will always attack government, they'll always attack lawmakers, they'll always be attacking the industry that they are currently dominating.
But I mean, there are black executives in these
Forget
Chamber
black
of Mines
executives.
and former CEOs. Are you saying that their interests...
Look, the interest of black executives is simple.
Extended to the country.
The interest of black executives is simple. We have a lot of safe black people who only want to save their jobs, who only want to save their mandates of continuing to earn the income and the obscene amount of profits that they are making. It's a handful of black people. It is not the population of South Africa and does not even represent the dynamics and demographics of South Africans who are currently poor because of this mining economy. If we were decisive, mining industry would not be taking us into this kind of corners and mistreating us on every level of legislation making. But our black executives, who have chosen to be safe blacks and have decided to become so soft and peddling when it comes to decisiveness and saying we want now a decisive equity and participation in this industry. We want to now industrialize and start producing and actually beneficiating our minerals. We want to have mining extractive companies play a role in our economy. You would not have this disaster. By the way, the intention of the shutdown of the South Africa's economy, which is primarily mineral, it's intended to drive us into the hands of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, for a rescue and a bailout. So eventually what you're seeing here with the cataclysmic challenge that is coming from the Chamber of Mines, it's just driving us into that, help Mekar type of a situation where we will be with our hands outstretched to say, guys, we have been defeated, please give us money. And who's going to give you money? Either the World Bank or your IMFs of the world, on conditions that you are going to do structural adjustment programs. And those policy conditions will now even further entrench ordinary South Africans into dire poverty, and it will not help our country. Do we stand for that as Transformer SA? No, we do not stand for that, and we are clear.
All right, I believe we have Ben Sitlauno. He is the president of South African National Mine Mining Council. Thanks again for joining us. Is there still room to negotiate, or do you think that it's gone to that point where it's a test of character and strength as to who will buckle or give in between the Department of Mineral Resources and the Chamber of Mines?
Look, Cindy, I think we are missing a point here. The point we are missing here is more than 600 mines in South Africa is being closed. A lot of people, they've been lost their jobs. And others are threatened to be lost their jobs. The question that we are missing here is not how we are planning ahead of what are we going to do in terms of our minerals. The issue that at hand here is that what is it that we're going to do in order to safeguard the jobs that we have and to making sure that the 600 mines that is being closed, more than 600 mines are reopened and people are going to have jobs. Now, I mentioned 3 issues here. I said there is a rehabilitation fund. There is a money from TEBA fund. There is a money from unemployment fund. What do we do with the money? Where is the money? Who else is in charge of the DMR? Is Minister Zwane going to assist this community with that money? And Minister Zwane must come out clearly with the report. How many mines that are in license are in a possession of license as we speak? How many mines that have lost their license?
All right, Ben, just a quick response from Jackie. I feel, yeah, just very briefly.
This is a problem with...
I just want to finish my point. The last point is that the Minister Zwane must come up with an evaluation report, the mining evaluation report. And that mining evaluation report is going to assist us in a great deal going forward.
No, yeah, I'm sorry. We're seriously out of time. We're going to have to let it go. Jackie Shandu, political analyst, and Adil Nchabileng is the president of Transform RSA, and Ben Sitlauno, he is the president of South African National Mining Council. I almost want to give myself a badge of bravery for saying it correctly, at least the last attempt. And you at home, thanks indeed for joining us. We're back after this.